Hi guys, Rob Betts, Director of Communications here at Shawnee Community College. I'm pretty excited today. I get to sit down with Dr. Taylor. I work directly for Dr. Taylor and get to work with him every day, but it's not often that you get to sit down and get a chance to interview. So thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it, Doc.
You're much welcome. This is an important topic that we're going to be talking about today, and I enjoy talking about stuff anyway, so you know how I am.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm going to make reference to, in our area, we've got lots of Cardinals fans, but we got Cubs fans too. And so if you notice that back there behind us, we'll tell you that some of us are Cubs fans and some of us are Cardinals fans. So.
And then there are some that are neither.
Fair enough, fair enough. Well, the reason that we wanted to do this video is we wanted to get together and kind of talk about, there are some things that are changing in the state. The governor has just made some changes with regard to our COVID protocols for the state, and those are not the same for everybody. And you're recently just sent out some guidance for the college, and so I wanted a chance to sit down and talk with you about that for just a little bit.
Yeah, the governor released the state into full phase 5 reopening last week, and I know for a few weeks colleges around the country, and especially in our region, have dropped mask requirements. They've talked about capacity changes, and you know, people are wondering why we haven't done anything yet, right? And so, what's the holdup for Shawnee College? What's taking some time? What are we going to do? I mean, and those are legitimate questions. And honestly, I really wanted to really put some thought into what we should do, and really analyze the different areas of guidance that's being issued about this. I mean, if you look at the governor's statement, he basically talks about, after a tremendously challenging year, Illinois has now reached a defining moment in our efforts to fight and defeat COVID-19. Illinois will soon resume life as we knew it before, returning to events, gatherings, and fully reopening the economy. Now, that's exciting, right?
Absolutely.
After a year,
I got excited when we read it.
After a year of sitting at home and Zooming and all kinds of things just to meet people, not going to events. I mean, I had concert tickets to go to Motley Crue last summer, and that got canceled. And my son, who's now a Motley Crue fanatic, he even looks like Vince Neil, was so disappointed. But I mean, this is exciting for everybody. I mean, getting into that thing, getting ready to be involved with all kinds of events and stuff. But then there's this caveat the governor said at the end of the statement that said, with some of the safety guidelines that we've adopted still in place. And so, people hear reopening. Everything's reopening, right? Returning back to the way things were. But the reality is COVID still exists. It didn't exist before.
Right.
Right? And so we have to worry about people who aren't fully vaccinated as we think about our approach to our protocols for Shawnee College. Right? And so that was an important distinction that we all have to realize is, even though this is a full reopening of the economy, being able to do events, it's not like it was before COVID. It's because COVID is here, and that's really dramatically changing the way that we need to work. And so a lot of folks actually call this, instead of full reopening, they look at this and call this a new normal. A new normal. So that's what new normal means. We're going to operate as much as we could like we did before, but we also have to take into account the fact that COVID still exists, and we have to protect our folks, our people, our employees, our community who are not vaccinated, who have made the choice not to be vaccinated for whatever reason. We have to still protect them, and that's what this is about. That's what took some time.
Well, and that's I think something that we should probably mention, and in the comments I'll make sure that we link to information about what Shawnee Community College is doing specifically, and other things where people that are interested in vaccines. Our website, one of the things that I really appreciated about you in all of this is you wanted to, for our community partners' sake, not just internal customers, not just students, not just employees, faculty, staff, but you wanted to create something on our website where it was a place where people could go and find out information to keep themselves safe. And that's one of the things that in reading this, that people's safety is taken into account, because not everybody, for whatever reason, as you said, is getting the vaccine. There are people who, because of physical health reasons, have been, excluded at this time, and the medical professionals are telling them, there's reasons why they shouldn't. So the fact that you took into account, you took time to find out how we could be a part of this new normal and safely reopen, yet take into account those people, is just, I think there's a lot of value in that for our community, for sure.
Absolutely. I think really, what is it? Maslow hierarchy of needs, where the first level is safety and security. When you start talking about and evaluating need, safety has to be at the top of your list, and so that really did inform the approach to developing the new protocols that we rolled out. And the other thing that weighs in is the inclusivity. How do we continue to encourage people to feel included? And equity is also part of it. Or how do we treat people equally when some are vaccinated and some are not vaccinated? And so all of those concepts kind of roll in philosophies, and you have to make choices about different guidelines and protocols. And so you want those to be as well informed as they possibly could, and you don't want to have some sort of, in my opinion, I don't want to have some sort of knee-jerk reaction saying, well, we're going to do this because John A. Logan's doing this, or Southeastern's doing this, or Banterra Bank's doing this. We don't want to have that kind of conversation. We need to look at it and customize it to Shawnee College and our employees, our students, and the community members that we serve.
And I think that people will be really excited, because that's exactly what they'll find as they're reading it. This is tailored specifically to the people that we serve in our community and to the people that are on this campus. And I think that's a positive. So when I read it, I was excited, because, hey, this means some reopening, and I can handle some new normal if I get some normal.
Right. So that's, it's trying to balance, what the safety guidelines are versus, creating an environment and promoting an environment of inclusivity and equity. And so, just a general teamwork kind of an environment. How can we do that in this COVID world? And we have to remember, this is still a COVID world.
Yes, sir. Well, if you would let me, what I thought we could do is, there's a few things in here specifically that if we ask about them, some of the particulars that maybe you could expound on for us, so that if people have questions even after
Sure,
reading
absolutely.
this, that we'd be able to do that.
Yeah, it's not clear, probably. It's as clear as I could make it in writing. Hopefully this will help explain some of it, but even then, people will have questions, because it's difficult to understand. And trust me, having looked at all of the documentations and guidance with this, I understand it. So, I really should probably talk a little bit about how I got to these even.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you look at it and you do see that there are some things that maybe seem more general or more specific, what did lead you to the decisions that you made? Where did you, if you don't mind me asking, where you got your guidance for?
Right. So, ultimately you want to start with what's legal, right? And so the first question is you start looking at what the governor's order was in moving, and what the guidelines are from their office. Basically, it was, we are opening up everything but we have to observe some protocols, right? And so what those protocols was kind of to be discovered, really, I think. And so when you started talking to officials about this, they say, well, there's the CDC guidelines, and there's the Illinois Department of Public Health, and then, start there. And so that's kind of where I started. And if you look at the CDC guidelines, they're not very clear as it relates to full reopening. A lot of the guidelines that are for full reopening look like the bridge to phase 5 guidelines to full reopening. Okay. And then there are the CDC guidelines are tailored to specific industries. So, if you're in business, here's some guidelines. If you're in K-12 education, here's some guidelines. If you're in higher education, here's some guidelines. Look a lot like business, but they kind of bridge back to schools as well. And if you look at Illinois Department of Public Health guidelines, they kind of mirror CDC guidelines, and they have a little bit, and they expound upon those a little bit. And so if you were to look at those guidelines specifically, they look a lot like the Bridge guidelines. So in those guidelines, CDC, IDPH, they basically say, if you're in, and it starts with people who are vaccinated versus, not versus, but and then looking at people that are not vaccinated or not fully vaccinated. So if you're in an environment where everybody's fully vaccinated, here's a list of guidelines. If you're in an environment where everybody's not fully vaccinated, here's a list of guidelines. When you're in a mixed environment where you got both, kind of where Shawnee is, there's not a lot of clarity about what makes sense. There's guidelines, and so so where I started was looking at the CDC guidelines, and if I were to interpret them strictly as they are presented, it looks like we would still have to wear masks regardless because we're in a mixed environment of vaccinated versus not vaccinated. We would still have to social distance. We would still have to put capacity limits on different things. And so what we were doing in phase 5 would look a lot like what we were doing as a bridge to phase 5. But I don't think that was the intent. And then as I started talking to government officials, high-ranking government officials, about what the intention was, it was clear that they wanted us to have some flexibility to be able to interpret the guidelines and implement the ones that made the most sense for individual businesses and colleges and things like that. And so in a sense, what that provided us is an opportunity to say, we're going to evaluate these guidelines that are out there from the CDC, IDPH, in those organizations, and tailor those for Shawnee College, which is what we attempted to do right now.
There are specific times where I'm even more thankful that I'm doing marketing and PR and you're president, and this is one of them. When you have to weed through things that the depth of, considering the legal ramifications, but not just making that your only decision-making factor, because the fact that people are at different levels in their vaccine and things. What are the legal requirements? What is the state telling us? But what does Shawnee Community College need to successfully move forward in this new normal?
Right. So the guidelines, they're guidelines. They're not laws, they're not rules, they're just guidelines. And so guidelines basically help aid the decision-making process, but they're not, you can deviate from guidelines, right? That's a principle that's well established, in business for years. Guidelines are just, these are ways to assist in the decision-making process. And so that's what these are from a CDC and IDPH. They're just helps us assist in the decision-making process. And I found them to be very helpful in helping us make our decisions moving forward. But then there's other things. There's laws. There's privacy laws. There's health protection, safety laws. All of those things had to be considered as part of the decision making. So, some folks probably are wondering, well, the governor released this last week. What are you? You're a week late telling us on what we need to do. Well, we had to kind of really just sit and evaluate all of the stuff. Try to take my personal, beliefs out of it and say what's best for Shawnee Community College, right? And what's best for the college, and make sure that the college is respecting equity, respecting privacy, respecting inclusiveness, respecting the legal elements, making sure safety is all as well balanced as it could, and develop guidelines for the college based off of those.
Well, and then in reading them, Dr. Taylor, some of the things that I think it's valuable that not only our faculty, staff, and our students are finding out what this looks like. As a community college, we welcome so many people from the community here for athletic events, for service organizations who utilize our facilities, all these things. And with the guidelines so different everywhere that they go, I feel like the way that you've tailored this for us, how you've opened this up for for our information within the college, but also including the community in there. They can look at these guidelines, they can hear what we're doing on campus, and they can make plans to be able to utilize our facility more than, during COVID restrictions when we had capacities were down to almost nothing, and at one point nothing nationwide. And so those restrictions were on us as well, and that meant that those organizations were either not meeting or meeting by Zoom. This is going to be guidance that will help them to know how that they can.
Shawnee Community College has always prided itself on being a hub for the community, a connecting point for people to get together and enjoy themselves in the college as fruits of our labor, right? So, whether it's athletic events or plays or musicals or, just general meetings, Shawnee College has always been there for our community, and we love that. We really do. And this last year has been really hard on everybody. It's been hard on, not just the employees and staff at college, but also in the community in general. So these guidelines, what this does, it allows us to get back and re-engage with the community in the ways in which we all want to engage. But it also respects, I think, the privacy and the choices that people make as it relates to the vaccines, because we're going to have people who are fully vaccinated and those who have chose not to be fully vaccinated, and this allows us to think through those kinds of processes and engage the communities in a responsible way.
I'm real excited about that it gives people the guidance that if they have or they haven't been vaccinated, it takes out some of that awkwardness. What am I going to do when I get there? Because we already know what we're going to do based on this guidance. So some of the things in specifics that you mentioned, I think probably, as you said, it's as clear as it could be made on paper because of just the convoluted nature of the entirety, everything that's going on in our world. But if I just ask you some things and maybe you can elaborate on a few of the specific points that people are going to be questioning, if that's okay, and just from this specifically. Masking is a big one, I think. Who and when, those kind of things. Maybe we talk about that a little bit. Who can not wear a mask, or you're okay to not wear it? Who needs to still wear it? Where they wear it, when they wear it, those kind of things. Could you elaborate on some of that maybe just a little bit?
Sure. CDC came out, I think it was in May, that as we were in the bridge to phase 5, that talked about people who were fully vaccinated no longer needed to wear a mask. And in their guidance, they talked about if you were mixing with people who were all fully vaccinated, no one needed to wear a mask. Didn't have to worry about social distancing, capacity limits, whatever they were before, they were again. So if everybody were fully vaccinated, it would be a very simple, easy way to interpret it, because we wouldn't really need guidelines, because we'd just say go back to the way things were.
Sure.
So that was one thing. So then CDC then also talked about people who were not fully vaccinated for whatever reason. And, the vaccine is like you mentioned earlier, some people are not medically able to receive the vaccine. Some people, and vaccine's not available for young kids yet, right? And so whatever the reason is, if you're not fully vaccinated, you're still susceptible to COVID. Not only of getting it, but transmitting it as well. And so we have to be able to protect all individuals as it relates to that. So the CDC guidelines is we wear a mask, social distance if you're not fully vaccinated. And then it goes on and talks again about mixed audiences. And basically, if you're in a mixed audience, it recommends that if you're not fully vaccinated, then you have to wear a mask and social distance. People who are fully vaccinated in that mixed environment don't have to wear a mask, but they recommend social distancing of 6 feet, right? And so that's a complication. You have to rely on individuals on their honor, right, to kind of wear a mask or not wear a mask, depending on their status. Because we're just not going to ask people, are you vaccinated or you're not? That just didn't seem like it felt right for Shawnee College. And so looking at those guidelines, we started looking then at what other colleges were doing. We asked them, you've decided to go not fully masked. Why did you do that? And they explained their rationale. And then I asked other organizations, and pretty soon I kind of started to get a feel for it. And that's how we developed our guidelines here. Basically, a value of choice is present throughout these guidelines. You can choose to get a vaccine or not. If you're not, then these are the protocols moving forward. If you have, these are the protocols moving forward. So it emanates from choice, and we want to respect that for each individual. And so that's where we developed the masking guidelines. That's really probably the most, worrisome thing for people is, do I have to wear a mask or do I not have to wear a mask? And so, following the CDC guidelines, if you're fully vaccinated, these are your rules. You don't have to wear a mask.
You've been vaccinated. Why does it matter if I've been vaccinated? I think there's a lot of questions around that maybe when you're taking into consideration, there are people out there who also haven't been vaccinated because for whatever reason they were unable to be,
Right.
that you could potentially.
Right. Good question, because that's one of the things I thought about. Well, if I'm in a room with someone who's been, and I'm in the process, right, of being vaccinated, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, and if you're fully vaccinated, that just means you're pretty safe from transmission, from the COVID. And that's what the data has shown about the vaccinations. You're really pretty safe from that. So if I'm in a room and I'm fully vaccinated and somebody that comes in who isn't fully vaccinated, I don't have to worry about whether they have COVID or not, right? Because I've got the vaccine. So why does it matter if they have to wear a mask? Right?
Sure.
Because they're not going to transmit it to me if they've got COVID. And if all of our meetings were just one-on-one, that would work perfectly. But when you have people where you have, let's say, for example, you got one person who's fully vaccinated and two people that are not fully vaccinated, then you have the possibility where the people who aren't fully vaccinated could transmit the COVID to each other. Right? And so then that becomes a problem. So the reason you have to wear a mask in that situation is because you don't want to be able to transmit and socially distant in that scenario, so you don't transmit the virus back and forth between the people who are unvaccinated. And so that's really kind of what we had to worry about, and that's the thinking that went into it. And so, the mask doesn't protect the individual from the disease. The mask protects the individual from transmitting the disease to others, or slows that transmission down.
Well, and that's one of the things too, that when I mentioned that you took into account other people's situations, making the decision to say if you haven't been fully vaccinated that you're wearing a mask based on the guidelines that are out there. There are some people who are not vaccinated, but it's not because they don't want to be. There
Right.
are other extenuating circumstances, and in order to provide an equitable, safe environment for everyone, those people who want to be able to utilize Shawnee Community College, want to be able to attend classes, and you want a safe environment for them. And so having that mask in place so that even though they both haven't been vaccinated, one of them maybe has chosen not to for whatever their reason is, one has chosen not to because of medical reasons, but it adds that extra layer of safety. And so I think that's one of the things that stood out in here that I liked a lot. So.
Yes. And of course the rules are a little bit different indoors versus outdoors. And so when you read the guidelines that we put out, we said if you're not fully vaccinated, you have to wear your mask indoors, regardless of the reasons. If you're not fully vaccinated, you have to wear your mask outdoors if you're around people, and you have to socially distance between them. And so that's just basically the same guidelines that were in the bridge to phase 5, being implemented in phase 5. And those are going to have to remain intact until COVID is no longer a thing.
Fair enough. And I think, honestly, most people, they recognize, the issue is let's return to our normal as best we can, but these safety protocols that we put in place allow us to better be able to do that and to be able to come back together.
Right. So, one of the masking guidelines I mentioned is in our communication is that there will be indoor activities where there will be a mixture of non-vaccinated and vaccinated people. And in those situations where we can't guarantee a safe social distance, then we are going to require a mask for everyone. So even if you're vaccinated, you'll probably get, probably a little burnt around the edges when you have to, but and I don't blame you. I mean, I will be too. But we have to protect all individuals, and so there will be events where we want to have everybody at, so that we can be inclusive, so we can be equitable, and you're just going to have to wear a mask regardless of your vaccination status.
And that brings me to one of the other things that I wanted to bring up is capacity limits. How we're doing that, it ties directly into these masks. Why this is important is because in order to change those capacities so that we can have perhaps larger events and things like that. Could you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, one of the things that we spend a lot of time with researching is the capacity limits, because if you're fully able to conduct events, from what the governor said, the way you would before, then how do capacity limits play into that in a mixed environment of masked versus unmasked? And so we did some thinking about how we would do that, and we were going to return to the limits, capacity limits that we had before. But we also we're going to provide an avenue for non-vaccinated people to socially distance within those events. And so that's really something that's really going to be dependent upon that type of event, and so we're going to have to, customize classrooms, space, meeting space, and so forth, depending on the participants. But we wanted to have that ability to customize, and so that's how we determined it. We just looked at it from what the guidance was, and then trying to maintain that socially distant guideline for non-vaccinated.
So this means
folks.
then, Dr. Taylor, that we're going to go back to being able to have events again here, but we want people to know that if for whatever reason you haven't been fully vaccinated yet, you're in the process, you weren't able to yet, we're going to make accommodation for that. There's going to be a space for you, and everybody's coming along together.
Right, as best as we can in this new world of COVID. And when you were talking about that, it kind of reminded me, there'll be people who are already vaccinated who want to wear a mask, right? They're encouraged to do so. If that helps them feel better about participation and being involved at the college, then all means do so. But the other part of this is there's a certain element of our culture, not just Shawnee culture, but the culture of our world or of our country, where people are very anti-mask, right? They're very critical of people and the mask concepts. That's all right. That's your choice. Your choice to be critical. But while you're on our campus, you must respect our choices of making these masks a requirement for non-vaccinated people. So any kind of, you can have political views and you can state those outside of this college, but while you're here participating in our events, it's important to understand that you must support an individual's choice to wear a mask or not wear a mask.
Which goes right along with being a community college.
Yes.
Our community has different ideas about lots of different things, but our community also really likes to come to our play that we have every year. They really like to come to any of the events, the basketball games and stuff.
Absolutely.
And because of the differences, in order to be able to come together and do those things, we're just going to welcome the opportunity for those people that are whatever end of the spectrum, wherever they're at. We're in this plan going to be able to allow them that space to be able to come and be a part of what Shawnee College is doing.
Absolutely.
There are a couple of other things on here. The social distancing, that again, it's part of the process. Why can't I just everywhere I go, I don't have to worry about whether or not I bump into other people and I'm in their personal space. There's a reason why we're still going to have some social distancing in particular situations, right?
Yes, and it really comes down to trying to protect the individuals who are not vaccinated. So, that is really the central thread that runs through all of this, looking at the CDC guidelines, looking at what's worked. Shawnee College hasn't had a positive COVID test since February. And the reason is because Well, there are a lot of reasons, but one of the major reasons is we've implemented successful mitigation protocols that respected the CDC and IDPH guidelines as it relates to masking and social distancing. We also encouraged and facilitated a lot of vaccinations opportunities for individuals. We will continue to do those things, but everything really has to do right now with those folks who've made the choice to not be vaccinated.
So along with masking and capacity limits and social distancing, there were some other things that we did. There was, the world has changed, the landscapes have changed a little bit. When you walk into buildings, you see hand sanitizers and temperature checking stations, things like that. So now that we're moving into this new normal, do those go away, or are they still? Is that something we're doing?
Absolutely. I mean, as long as COVID still exists, right, we have to manage that and mitigate the effects of COVID for our employees and for our students and for our community. And so things like symptom checking, we're still going to be doing. So, I mean, as much as some folks don't like to come in and have their temperature checked, we still need to do this so that all individuals are protected. We're still going to have our testing protocols in place. If you're demonstrating symptoms, then we're going to ask you to be tested. We're still going to have our quarantine and isolation procedures in place, because if you test positive, then you're going to be quarantined and following those same rules. All of these procedures that we've implemented have been effective in the past and will likely continue to be effective in the future. If you have been diagnosed as having COVID, we're going to be following our contact tracing procedures. I think it will be very important so that we can identify those folks that you've been in contact with and notify them that they may be subject to COVID again. We'll still have the stringent cleaning procedures in place. I mean, we want to make sure that the college is very, very clean, and if the virus doesn't get on campus, that we do everything we can to eradicate it so it doesn't spread amongst the population. And so our stringent cleaning will be in place. The plexiglass that we have throughout the campus, we're going to maintain the plexiglass at the front desk so that we can protect the people at the front desk that's working there. Not necessarily from the employees and their students, but there's community members that will be walking in that may or may not be aware of our protocols, and we just want to make sure that that plexiglass is in place to protect those individuals. Now, if you're in your office and you've got plexiglass, it's your choice. You want to replace that or get rid of it? Your choice. If you want to keep it, that's great too. We'll support those elements, and so that's in place. And then I'm going to ask you to make new signs, right? to explain what our rules are, because they've shifted. And so those are the things that we're going to make sure that are continuing in place, just so that we can manage this for the folks that need to have it managed.
And those things, like you said, giving the students and the faculty and staff the opportunity to, if they've been vaccinated, to put that on record. I think for everyone, when you're attempting to mitigate risk, or if you're attempting to isolate or try to figure out things to keep things moving safely forward, it's an opportunity for people to be involved in that and to help. It's just another layer of protection, I think, for people.
Sure, we are going to encourage people who have their vaccinations to disclose. I mean, and we'll keep record of that for a lot of different reasons. But if you don't want to, we're encouraging you to disclose. If you don't want to, that's fine too. It just will help us manage the disease a little more effectively. So, for example, if you come in and somebody has tested positive for COVID, and you're on our vaccination list, we don't have to contact trace you. We can contact trace you, then we can say this person's probably safe, and they don't have to isolate or quarantine. But if we don't, then we're going to contact you, and then you'll have to either make a choice to disclose, or you'll have to isolate. So, I mean, these are the kinds of things that, the self-disclosure will about the vaccination status will be helpful for us. We're going to ask the students to do the same thing. They don't have to, again. So it's just, we're going to put some things in place to encourage students to get vaccinations in the fall. I think we're going to, we'll have some sort of maybe event that encourages it. We'll definitely have a vaccination clinic on campus, I think, so that students can get easy access to the vaccination if they haven't had it in the past. And so we're just going to try to do some things like that to help manage the disease as much as we possibly can.
You know, this is really, I think, one of the things that I'm really excited about is this is coming at a great time. Enrollment's going on now for our fall semester. And so during COVID, we were offering online classes, we were offering hybrid, and certainly we were offering in-person classes, but at a reduced capacity. There weren't as many people who could come here on campus, and so some people sort of took a wait and see approach. Now, with the protocols we're putting in place and this new normal as we're reopening, they can be confident they can safely return to campus. But does that mean then that online and remote interaction, those kind of things, do they go away, or what do we do going forward?
Great question. Great question. You know, one of the things that we've learned over the last year or so as we've done this is that our community, our students, most of our employees, I think, really prefer to interact in a face-to-face method. I mean, that's just the preference. I think a lot of folks participated, you know, remotely with Zoom and WebEx and, you know, Skype and those kinds of tools, but they really felt like they were missing something and really preferred that face-to-face model. But at the same time, there are some employees that like that. And some students who like that, you know, remote access. And there's some strength to having some remote access stuff. You know, if you're a faculty member and you're recording your class and somebody's missed the class, right? Students can review what they missed. And so that's something that we didn't have available before. But primarily moving forward, we want to meet the wishes of the individuals that we're working with, the community, the students, and our employees who want to interact in a face-to-face model. So we are going to have more of that. I mean, our meetings are going to be face-to-face. Our events are going to be face-to-face. We've got more classes that are going to be face-to-face. We'll probably have additional opportunities for people to participate in these kinds of events remotely that we didn't have before. So that's kind of a plus and a positive. So that is really one thing I really want to expound on, is that we are moving in a face-to-face direction, but we are also being responsive to those who want to participate remotely. That's one thing. The second thing is and it kind of alludes to it, but it supports what we talk about. One of the things COVID has taught us over the last year is we need to be adaptable and responsive to changes. You know, the guidelines changed from phase 1 to phase 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. And we had to respond accordingly. As we move forward, we're going to learn more about the virus. We're going to learn more about the vaccines. As we learn more about those, we're going to change. You know, if it comes to a point of where we no longer have to wear, I mean, longing for this day, right, where no one has to worry about wearing a mask and socially distant because we've fought the virus to where it doesn't matter anymore. We'll be the first to say, no mask ever. That's when we can have that mass burning party, right, that some of us want to have. When that day comes, we'll do that. Capacity limits, no restrictions on, you know, social distancing, no masking, all that. That'll happen. However, if new variants come along and it requires everybody to go back to masking or social distancing, or us to move back to a fully remote environment, we'll do so as well. And so we're trying to learn about it. We're going to be adaptable, and that's something the college needs to do moving forward. But I'm longing for the day where we can have that mass burning party that everybody wants to have.
Well, I think it's great that we can, our students, our faculty, the staff, the community can be confident that when they come on campus, we're not just making decisions here. You didn't just look at the things that were going on, make a decision, and that's it. You know, that's it is what it is, and we're not gonna change it. It's adaptable. We're open as much as we can be, and there are going to be mask-free faces, and you'll be seeing smiles with more than just eyes. And so all of those things are taking place. But if you're a student or faculty member, staff member, community, if there's something that changes and we need to make sure that whatever we can do to keep our community safe, that we're staying on top of this. Here, we're making sure that we're doing our part at the college to be able to continue to provide for the educational needs of our community, but to do that in a safe way in this new normal environment, I think is is excellent. So.
Right. So in terms of helping folks make those decisions, we're trying to be as transparent as we can in using our website as a tool to communicate information. So, the communication that I sent out to employees earlier today will be available there. This video that we're having will be available there. But anybody within the community, any student, any staff member, faculty member can look at this and understand what's going on at the time. And we're going to continue to update information as it relates to vaccine effectiveness, virus effect, mitigation procedures. And so all of that stuff will be continued to be out there. If you've got questions, giving you additional opportunities about it. If you're an employee, you can contact Dr. Shelby. And if you're a community member, we've got a way for you to do that as well. And so just providing alternate avenues to find out information so that you can make informed decisions is critical as we are trying to move forward and work together in this new normal.
And that the website that Dr. Taylor is talking about is our college website, shawneecc.edu. When you get there to our main page, you can actually find a tab there available for you to get the latest COVID information with regard to vaccine, with regard to what we're doing here on campus, this video, this correspondence, all of those things. But while you're there, you can enroll for classes. I mean, fall enrollment is going on right now. We are excited about the future and what's going on here. You go to our website, shawneecc.edu. You give us a call at 618-634-3200. And somebody will help you to find a career path that's right for you, whether it's transfer degrees, certificate programs. Shawnee Community College has been here for over 50 years for folks, Doc, and we're still here moving forward. I kind of like this forum. Maybe we can get a chance to do this again if you'd let me.
This is pretty awesome. And what we should do is take suggestions of what people want to hear, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, let us know. If you send us an email, tell us what you want to hear about. You can send an email to marketing@shawneecc.edu and you can let me know, hey, we'd like to hear some information about this. I'll see if I can schedule some time with Dr. Taylor again. We'd love to sit down and be able to do this with you. Thanks so much for answering these questions for the entire college community, not just for me, but for everybody here on staff, the faculty, and for you folks in the community. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your time today, Doc. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob. This is awesome, and please let us know if you want to know anything else.